I'm Giselle,
I'm Elizabeth.
and we watch Bruce
Bruce Almighty.
So the movie starts off with Jim Carrey playing the character of Bruce Nolan, an average Joe guy with a dog and a girlfriend who is perpetually upset with his mediocre life. He soon loses his job and everything goes downhill, and he chooses to blame all his troubles on God. Suddenly, out of nowhere, God appears and tries to teach him a lesson by giving him godly powers for a few weeks. Bruce begins to abuse his powers for selfish reasons, and soon his world around him kind of goes up in flames. He then has to learn how to right his wrongs, put his world back together, and win back the love of his life, all the while respecting free will and trying to balance his godly powers with his earthly being.
So this is kind of a synopsis of the story. So now we're going to go into talking about the ethical systems behind his reasoning. So in the beginning, we kind of saw that how he's purely hedonistic, because the only thing he cares about is himself and his own problems. So he goes and he loses his job, and he just starts being mad at the world and even mad at his girlfriend. So one scene in the movie is where him and his girlfriend are fighting, and he complains about, oh my gosh, I can't believe I'm living this mediocre life. And she comes back and she says, is that what you think we have, a mediocre life? And he says, don't make this about you. And you can kind of see, even when he's fighting with his girlfriend, even though he even has a girlfriend and an okay living situation, all he cares about is the fact that he lost his job and the fact that he's not in a position where he wants to be. So that is kind of where we see that the only thing he cares about is himself, kind of relaying this hedonistic way of thinking. And then he goes on, and once he starts blaming everything on God, he meets God, and God tries to teach him a lesson by giving him godly powers for a couple weeks, and he tries to see whether Bruce will either use his powers for good or for selfish reasons. And he ends up using his powers for selfish reasons, just like a hedonist would. So one by one, he goes around trying to fix his problems in his life, first off by starting with his girlfriend. So he comes home from getting these godly powers, and he tries to woo his girlfriend in order to distract her from the fight that they just previously had. So he goes and he kind of ties a rope around the moon, and he brings the moon closer to her to try to woo her and impress her. And what is the consequences of his actions?
The consequences were that because of the moon being brought closer, it caused the tidal waves to change, and a tsunami happened, which a lot of people died from.
So because of this, just because of the fact that he wanted to woo his girlfriend, entire culture of people died and were in danger because of a tsunami. So that's kind of one thing that you kind of see. It's like, wow, he didn't even care about what happened to other people. He just cared about himself, which is a very kind of resembles the deontology ethics in the movie. So moving on, another interesting thing that we found was when he wakes up one day and he starts hearing all these voices in his head, and these voices ended up being prayers, because he was God, and obviously people are going to pray to God. So he's just kind of distracted and shocked and confused by all these things that are happening in his head, because all of a sudden, out of the nowhere, people started talking, and it's just what's happening. And so he's trying to find a way to rid the prayers from his head. So he says that, okay, I'll just find an organizational system for all these stupid prayers and I'll get it done with. And he ends up over time compiling them all into an email-based system where people send him emails which are actually the prayers, and he can easily just kind of say yes to everyone and be done with it. And what happens eventually is that he gets sick and tired of reading all these prayers, and so he just kind of does something on his computer to the point where he just presses yes to every single person who sends in a prayer. So what are the consequences of this action?
The consequences are that everyone's getting what they want, and for example, a lot of people prayed that they would win the lottery, and when they did, people were angered because it was 4,000 people winning it, and they all had to split the money, which caused a riot to happen around the city of Buffalo.
So you can kind of see that all of this happened just because of his hedonist way of thinking, because he just wanted to get rid of these prayers and not have to deal with it anymore. So eventually, as he's saying yes to everyone, the world kind of goes up into flames, because there's no way the world can go into peace when everyone is just getting what they want. So eventually, as he realizes that his actions are leading to this kind of world chaos, he has to understand that he is in control of his actions, and he has to make this ethical decision that, hey, I'm not going to start only thinking about myself. I actually have to think about others too. So he starts moving from deontology to teleology, which is where he stops thinking about himself and he starts thinking about the consequences of his actions. So over time, one by one, he starts to repent for all the things that he did and everything, and he he starts trying to fix the problems that he once created, and eventually everything returns to order because he made the decision to stop being such a hedonist and start thinking about what was good for the rest of the people. So these are the kind of interesting points that we found in this movie.